morning, everybody. How are we doing? Hope you're all doing well and nicely refreshed with a fabulous cup of coffee and some snacks. Well, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 10th Middle East Retail Forum, or, as it's commonly known, MRF 2021. That's 10 years of retail knowledge and sharing throughout leaderships and insights, revelations, organized by the Image Group for the region retail family. Over the course of the last 10 years, we have witnessed some of the region's biggest retail leaders share their exclusive views, opinions, ideas, and strategies on the stage right here at MRF. As a result of which, the event has gained reputation for being the foremost retail intelligence symposium in the entire region, where retailers come together and chart the roadmap for the future collectively and collaboratively. Now, before we start the session, I'd like to run through just a couple of the really boring house rules regarding social distancing and face masks and everything else. I know that a lot of you will already know this, but it's part of my job, otherwise I don't get paid. Make sure, of course, at the right times you wear your face mask. Social distancing is still in place here, obviously, at the Conrad Hotel, and there are areas around the foyer and in the room here where if you do need hand sanitizer, it will be there for you. Now, this event wouldn't have been possible without the support of our speakers, our delegates, our team, and our partners. Our sponsors today are Zebra Technologies, our retail tech partner, Dubai Outlet Mall, our platinum partner, Altavant Technologies, Adyen, and Board International are gold partners. Ithra, Dubai, Dalma Mall, Zeno, and DVO are silver partners. KPMG, our knowledge partner. LP Flex, our branding partner. And believe it or not, Expert Hub Robotics, you guessed it, our robotics partner, if you haven't already seen them out in the lobby there. And of course, Sion, our retail lightning partner. Thank you to everybody and all for the support for making this event happen. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our opening speaker who would actually like to make some opening remarks for you to give a keynote address. I'd like to invite Justine Eitzinger, the COO of Images Group Middle East, to say a few opening words for today's session. Justina, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Justina Eitzinger, the COO of Images Group Middle East. And it is my utmost pleasure to welcome you all to the 10th edition of the Middle East Retail Forum, Images Retail ME's annual symposium, which serves as a powerful aggregator of entrepreneurs, leaders, innovators, and global retail trends. Retailers have been speaking about transformations and an evolution and revolution of the retail landscape for a while. But the pandemic accelerated all their efforts, and they went into overdrive to meet the customers' expectations and keep their businesses running. Some thrived. Amidst this and all of the chaos came new business models, diversified revenue streams, high-tech omnichannel operations, all driven by the goal to give customers exceptional experiences and amazing them at every step of the way. From shop-in-shop concepts to cashless supermarkets, stores turning into runways for fashion models, and also doubling up as kids' play areas, virtual AR try-ons to digital fitting room mirrors, robots in the front end greeting customers to robots in the warehouses doing the fulfillment. We've witnessed all of this and more in the region. At MRF this year, we bring the region's trailblazers like all of you together to unravel the future of retail experiences and construct a cohesive plan of action by means of a CEO's conclave, really interesting panel discussions, our very own solo segment, which are stories, opinions, learnings and outcomes by inspiring leaders, insight revelations, and some surprise elements as well. We're also trying to replicate some of the experiences right here at MR.
Right, well done, Justina. Yes, you've got the job. You can take over from me for the rest of the day. So seriously though, we're about to get underway with our fabulous CEOs conclave, which you can see there in the middle of the floor. Our CEOs are raring and ready to go. Now, how many of you thought, well, you'll know where you'll be in 5 years from now? Have you ever even thought about what you're going to be doing professionally or personally 5 years from now? Well, we're not just planning on thinking about the future of retail 5 years from now, but we're also going to be discussing it right here, right now, and our CEO's conclave will be rewriting the rules of retail right before your eyes. Now, this session is a round table, technically not round, it's more squarish, but the round table there is in the middle of the hall, and of course, you are invited to join this discussion. They're going to discuss the state of the retail industry, major innovations and transformations introduced, and what the future holds for the sector. I'd like to welcome our CEOs, Khalid Soliman, from the Group CEO of Jashan Mal Group, Nisreen Shoker, the CEO Middle East of Yux Net-a-Porter. You can keep clapping. Ahmed Ragab, the CEO of Baraka Retail Group. Muna Al-Gurg, the Retail Director of Isa Salah Al-Gurg Group. Tapan Vaida, CEO of Papa John's. Welcome back to you, who was with us yesterday. We have Kishin Palija, the MD of Geekay, and Carl Masterman, the Senior Vice President, Retail of Sports. And before we get underway, I'd like to invite Shruti Nair, the Executive Editor of Images Retail Me, onto the stage to pass on some opening remarks too. Shruti, over to you.
Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining us here, and so happy to see all of you all who I've been writing about for the last year here amidst us. So like Lee mentioned, it is time for the CEO's conclave, and I'm just going to kick it off before I come down to ask all of you all the questions. So, everything you know about retail is wrong. Has that thought ever crossed your mind? With every passing year, with every new technological innovation introduced, with every new announcement that a Zuckerberg or a Musk or a Bezos comes out with, our reality as we know it gets challenged, doesn't it? We live in a world where the metaverse isn't just an episode from the Black Mirror, but could soon become the reality. The virtual and actual worlds are intertwined, where we are talking about flying a virtual drone in the metaverse to steer an actual drone in the real world. I mean, that's what we're talking about at this point, and that's incredible, in my opinion. Think about it, right? Our entire concept of retail is predicated on one very simple series of paradigms. Manufacturers make things that are parceled out in smaller lots to retailers who then sell them online or offline to consumers who accept the manufacturer's products and retailers' price and terms with no questions asked. Isn't this what we know about this the ecosystem that we are in right now? But what if this entire model were to be gradually challenged? What if consumers could begin effectively self-organizing, combining their respective buying power and taking control and power back in their hands, creating their own supply chains, maybe? Do you think that is plausible? For many retailers, success begins and ends with the brand identity, telling a story, developing a clear point of view, and creating a precise customer persona. But maybe that is a mistake. because the approach is more brand focused and not customer focused. In a retail world where everyone is trying to catch up with Amazon's mission statement of offering customers the lowest possible prices, the best available selection, and the utmost convenience, what if there is another way? I know I asked you a lot of what ifs in my quick little spiel before starting the CEO's conclave, but I think that is precisely why we're gathered here today, right? To challenge the status quo, to challenge the norms, to also question how and what we've been doing for all of these years. And that's why I think the CEO's conclave we have today with the top retail chiefs from the region is perhaps important, which is why we're gathered here to ask all of those questions, to find answers, perhaps to the what ifs. So on that note, I would like to say thank you to all of the CEOs joined us here on the panel, and thank you to all the attendees who are here with us. So let me start right here. So let's go around the table. Tapan, we want to know quickly, in under a minute, if you can tell us about your retail journey in the last year. What is it that you've learned? What is it that you're taking away from 2021 for the future, for the coming years?
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. 2021 has been a fantastic year, especially as it followed 2020. I mean, which year would you find as opportunistic as 2021, which came right on the back of one of the wretchedest of years? So, at Papa John's, we've had a fantastic 2021. We challenged the challenging times, really, and we managed to open over 15 new restaurants, which was in itself challenging, but the team did a great job. We managed to open these, and we managed to run these restaurants post-opening successfully. So 2021 was a tough year, but we've come out on top. We'll continue to do this. And the Expo has provided the much needed impetus in the last quarter, in which we are experiencing today. And I think this momentum will take us well into 2022, and we are going to continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Tapan. Coming to you now, Khalid. So we've been talking about digital transformation. A lot of retailers have told me in the past that it's not a transformation, it's an evolution. But from the conversations I've had with Jashan Mal, I feel like it has been a transformation, a sudden acceleration in especially the last 2 years. So take us through this digitization journey that you've gone through in Jashan Mal, and how, if not overnight, over the course of a few weeks, you've changed so much.
The red one, okay. Thank you, thank you. Well, Jashan Mal, one of family groups operated in Gulf, and it's a 100 years old group. So with 100 years behind you comes lots of growth, lots of development. Some of it controlled, some of it not controlled. We started our transformation journey on 2018 when the board decided to transform the group. And one of the biggest projects in the transformation, or reforms as we call it, was the digital transformation, which started 2018. So that required lots of changes in the group. But mainly, the change is a change in people, way of doing things, change in people, ability, and change of all our systems and procedures. So we needed to change, and we started the change by the IT in our infrastructure, and then it followed by bringing in lots of other digital components as we see it today, going into the online sales and online channels. It's a very, very big culture, and to change the culture from the offline to the online or to the digital was one of the serious challenges we went through, but we managed to do it. And I agree, COVID and 2020 was a very helping tools for all of us to really take the tough decisions which needed to be taken into that transformation. And then here comes 2021 as a relief year after all that. So we are in the process. It's an ever-ending process of transformation. And as you mentioned, metaverse now is coming, and it's a journey. Yeah. We are going through it together.
Absolutely. We're all going to do it together. Coming to you, Kishan. So you are in the whole gaming space, 30-odd stores. That was going well. And then this year you announced you dipping your toes into the esports avenue. And I'm not really surprised considering how dynamic the market is today. So tell us about both these aspects of your business and how gaming and retail is again merging into this one universe.
Right. So basically, I think I'm in a very unique industry which is ever changing. And it doesn't seem to surprise us. I think evolution is an ongoing process in our industry, and our consumers are more fast than we can be. We always have to play catch up, to be honest. With our investment into esports, the idea was to kind of connect with the gamers, connect with the community, and eventually work with these players who have so much talent in our region to grow them and make them so strong that they can go and compete on a national scale with other countries and other regions. And I think overall, it is our responsibility as a retailer to kind of take care of the community and help that community grow. Moreover, I think what we understand is these kind of steps create a very positive sentiment among our consumers. At the end, it's all about the consumers, right? And create the right experiences for them. And our objective is to kind of work esports and retail hand in hand and kind of help grow our retail space with the help of these stars and performers that we create eventually, who are kind of role models in the industry.
100%. Ahmad, thanks so much for coming all the way from Egypt this morning. I hope you had a pleasant trip as well. So Ahmad, Baraka Retail Group, again, various verticals, which started with the whole optical side of things, seen major evolution in that. But however, it's your collaborations that have actually caught all of our eyes in the recent past. So what is this direction you're moving towards? Is there private labels or some transformation on that side in your radar soon?
That's okay. Thank you for having me. I believe, when you're talking about transformation, for us, that transformation is not moving from one way of selling products to the other. It's about making, as we go, we make sense with the customers. We sense that our customers, after COVID and through the past 2 years, had different perceptions, different mindset. They're not after products, they're after stories. People now are going to buy new stories, not new products, for a statement. When it comes to convenience, it's not about being present online or offline, it's being present in their lives. We expanded so much our retail network in what we call community malls, where we want to be part of the community, of every community, to make sense with the customers. When it comes to the personnel, we started thinking of having people that can inspire people buying from them. So the collaboration thing is not about moving from one space to another. It's more of, and this is our main mission, that we see our customers and what makes sense for them, and we go there and we offer customers what makes sense for them. For the past period, people were more attached to stories, giving them a statement more than a product for convenience. And hence, that's why we started creating the stories for our customers.
Amazing. Great. Nasreen, coming to you now. Yux Net-a-Porter, global brand, everyone was very excited. And then again, this year, we heard the localization of Yux Net-a-Porter happening. Take us through your journey, your performance in this region.
Well, I think if anyone knows... on. Okay, hi. Hi, everyone. Good morning. If anyone knows me, you'd know that status quo is not my middle name in any way. So change was anyway on the cusp of why I came to the business. and localizing the brand. When we think about localizing, it's not about turning a site into Arabic. It's really working with communities. You just mentioned the e-gaming and the e-gamers. In our case, it's artists, it's creatives, it's the whole scene, social media, KOLs, and so on. So being able to provide that platform was really great. What really worked in our favor that probably wouldn't have worked any other way, and this is, I think, when you've been in a market long enough or in the markets long enough and you've seen enough downturns, obviously nothing was like this, you pick up a lot of strength and you learn how to turn something into an opportunity. So we manage 4 brands. 2 of them are on the luxury side and 2 of them are off-season. And we've had a sub-brand called Net Sustain for a good part of over 10 years. So as there was a lot of pressure on luxury, sustainability, a lot of focus on demand and customers not wanting us to continue to shove products while ruining the planet, it gave us a great opportunity to talk about the responsible things that we were doing and have been doing ahead of anyone else. So that really helped, the localization helped, and we talk about storytelling. Today's storytelling is not just on the front end, it's on the back end as well. I don't know a lot of, I know your businesses, but I don't know you, but I know Mona. So we're also in an environment where during this time, startups really, you can see their valuations grow exponentially, which is great to see for the environment. But some of us are in the value business and some of us are in the valuation business, i.e. some of us are chasing top line and some of us are chasing bottom line. And when you're chasing bottom line, you're going to make very different decisions that are probably more on the back end than the front end, such as supply chain, logistics, and so on, but all in a very responsible way. The cornerstone of our business is clienteling. So not being able to have dinner with our customers, not being able to see them, not being able to talk to them as in physical retail. Our digital business is clienteling as well. That was probably the greatest learning, is that the customer is so versatile, probably one step before metaverse, right? But they're also ready for metaverse. If any of you have kids and they're gamers, you know that for them owning a Balenciaga shoe on Fortnite is exactly the same or better than owning the real thing. So, you know, it's exciting times.
Oh, wow. We need to talk about that a little more and probably venture into NFTs as well in just a bit. But before that, let me come to you, Carl. GMG, again, so many transformations, so much news coming from there, from collaborations with RSH, global expansions, and recently you announced a whole restructuring, didn't you, with the whole addition of the workforce. Give us the gossip. What is happening inside GMG?
Good morning, everybody. I think that as GMG and our global well-being company, we had to cement our responsibility across communities. We have 4 verticals: GMG Sports, GMG Food, GMG Consumer Goods, and GMG Health. All of them, we had to have a new earned recognition of the role that they all play in terms of how we better serve communities. We've seen that over the last 2 years. If I reference our GMG Sports vertical, we had an enormous demand in terms of people's well-being from their homes. We had obviously lockdown restrictions, and I think that created a whole new demand in terms of even how people behaved around how importantly they took their well-being and their fitness. So we had to definitely diversify and make quick decisions. We are supported by a CEO that is very focused on a growth strategy, and he's very proud of what has been already achieved in our local territories of GCC. But that also opened an opportunity for us to recognize that why do we need to only focus on markets we existingly operate? We need to look at stretching the boundaries of GCC, hence why we acquired the RSH business. I believe that even though we recognize that we are proud to partner with international brands, we've been very successful at creating our own homegrown concepts. And I think it's a great sentiment to the Middle East that we've been able to take some of our homegrown concepts, and we will be taking them now to Asia as well as North Africa. And I think that gives a recognition and an earned appreciation to the Middle East that if you actually look at our retail platforms, we set a very high benchmark internationally for our standards of execution. And that's something that I think all of us in the room can be proud of, that represents the Middle East retail. It's not always really truly recognized. In terms of the change in structure, well, of course, the pandemic, it really accelerated the importance of one people. We were very fortunate as a one family cultured company that we were really recognizing the people that really stood by the organization through the pandemic. You very fast earned the appreciation for who was going to really step forwards and take the right decisions to safeguard not just protecting our consumers, but our team members internally. And then also it was about the change management. I think all of us have gone from, we represent over 500 physical stores, but that has to be complemented with an omni strategy. And, there were team members and talent that understood the importance of embracing that change, and there was others that resisted that change. And, we can't fail our consumers by being slow to market. We need dynamic talent that's going to come in and we're going to be retained in the business that respects that consumer-first approach. And that's something that, we have been heavily invested in, whereby we had to make those decisions on the restructuring side.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Carl, for that. And Muna, coming to you now. So during the pandemic, what we saw was there were essentially two categories, home and non-home. You've got a lot of luxury home interior brands under your portfolio. So would I be wrong in assuming that the pandemic hasn't probably been as bad for you as it has for the other retailers?
Yes, absolutely. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. So thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this forum and to share our experiences at the Edgar Group. So yeah, absolutely, you're right. It's been a transformative journey actually over the last 2 years. And there was a reluctance, and what I mean by that is there was a reluctance from managers in the past to sort of invest in e-commerce and digitization. And so what we saw is that the pandemic really catalyzed their change in their way of thinking and really kind of brought them to the table to say, we want this focus on e-commerce. And so as you rightly said, because a lot of our brands fall under home lifestyle, so home appliances and luxury, but also mid-range furniture, once we sort of really invested in e-commerce, we saw this whole array of chefs and people at home really looking into their hobbies. So everybody became like a bread, maker, or so people were really buying a lot of our appliances, and there was this huge surge in terms of people buying a lot of home appliances. Another thing is that people were sitting within the confines of their four walls, and they wanted to see a little bit of change within their homes. And so whether the budgets were not a lot or a lot, basically people would spend on home offices. So again, that whole focus on our customers and really building content towards and tailor-making that content towards our customer profiles really helped us during the pandemic. I think also what we saw as a result of that is that once the pandemic kind of started to cease, we saw this whole influx of people coming into our stores. And I would say really that the traffic now in our stores has increased more than pre-pandemic days. And that's because the type of customers that are walking into our stores are very different to what they were before. And that's because during this period of time and during these two years, we really did develop content online that spoke to those customers. I think also the pandemic was a call to action for organizations to think about their future, to think about how inclusive they may be, how they need to be relevant. And I think that's something that was lacking in the past. And so exactly to your point, talking about stories and talking about how, what is important to a customer right now. And it's very different to what was important to a customer, let's say, 5 years ago. The Gen Zs of the world are coming in, and they have to, their values are very different. And so this period of time really forced us into thinking about how do we really appreciate our customers, talk to our customers, and really, take them through that whole value system that they regard as important. Last but not least, I'd like to say that I'd like to say that we were very lucky unfortunate that we did not lay off one person during the pandemic. And I think that was really highly appreciated by our employees and our people. But we also appreciated our people because they really stood up and they really kind of went over and beyond. And I think, again, it reflected on organizations and their trust with their people, because the pandemic almost forced us to realize that, you know what, flexibility is important, and give your employees flexibility. They will implement, they will be there for you if they're loyal to your company. So those are really our findings during this journey.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Mona. So now this was just to give us all an idea of where we are at, how our retail operations and performances have been. So now let's talk about charting the future, right, which is what we're here for. You mentioned something very interesting about, content and stories, which is alluding to the fact that, what Nisreen said earlier. So Nisreen, especially when it comes to luxury, right? People don't buy products as a commodity. It's more of a communication, an expression of sorts. And we see a lot of retailers not imbibing those sentiments of their customers, of the products that they create. In the future, how do you see luxury retailers and the consumers of luxury being perceived?
Being perceived? Well, I'll take one step back. It used to be about expression. What we've seen is a complete shift towards investment. So the customer is a lot smarter about how they spend their money. They're a lot smarter about how much they pay, and they price compare. So it's a very different customer. It could be the last 2 years, economic instability. It also could be Gen Zs and younger. It's just the way they are. But also with re-commerce becoming such a main pillar in our business, investment pieces have become much more important. I will buy something, I want it to last longer, I want to wear it over and over, so I'm willing to pay the price up front, but I don't want to throw it out the next season. And you would be very tone deaf as a retailer if you kept throwing products season after season to a customer. So during the pandemic, for example, what we did was, rather than working with customers on just sales, we were working with them on redefining their closets, working with what they have and adding to them. So that was highly appreciated. It's really something that was very relevant to them. We talked a lot about, being relevant. If we did the opposite, and of course, it's very important for me, that's why I'm here. I'm here to drive growth. And the critical part is to drive the growth of the business. But if you do it at any cost, eventually you lose, right? So you sprint just to trip, essentially, and you don't want to do that. So what we did see, and we are seeing, is whether it's any element, jewelry has become, I'm talking about high-end jewelry, has become more and more of an investment. That's something that we did not necessarily see in the top 5. Now we're seeing it more and more for men and women. We're seeing any choice of a bag or a shoe is always made with an investment in mind. So we complete each other as an ecosystem. I think re-commerce helps us and we help them, and it's healthy for the environment. So that all in all, it's a good continuity.
Amazing. Thank you, Nisreen, for that. Tapan, let me come to you now, right? When we're talking about the future of the vertical you are in, essentially. So there's F&B on one hand. We've seen that, Dubai is probably the second most populated and congested market for restaurants. So you operate in an over-competitive, oversaturated market, and then you're in the fast food space. So things might be a little different for you there. What we've noticed, or from personal anecdotes of mine, earlier when we were kids, we used to go to like a Papa John's or a Pizza Hut, larger stores, and then we've seen the outlet sizes shrinking over time. What is the future of fast food going to be in terms of experiences? Is it going to be about takeout and delivery, or are you going to see experiential retail coming in fast food as well?
That's a good question. You see, not too long ago, what really mattered was great food. Have great food, and they came. Not you still need great food, mind you. You still need great food, but now there's so many other things have entered the equation. And this process has been evolving over time. Location came into the fray maybe in the 90s when you had to have a good location. Then you always wanted to have a great team, so just the food was not enough. You wanted a team that smiled, that provided great service. And then these two elements have entered the game in the last few years: tech support and mind you, in the restaurant industry, tech support started long before the pandemic. Many chose to embrace, and they did well, and some did not, and they had to hurry up. And then there are the aggregators, the likes of Talabat, Deliveroo, Zomato, Careem, etc. So going forward, almost every function within a restaurant team needs solid tech support, except the actual preparation of food. I'm an old school fool. I wouldn't have robots cooking my food. But everything else, there is, I think, a lot of value is going to be added by tech. Restaurant teams or operating teams will have to be very agile with aggregators, because gone are the days when we used to plan annual marketing calendar and then stick to it. No more. Every week things change. Every week aggregators come up with plans, and we just have to adapt. So the future is going to be good, but all teams will have to be agile and adapt, and wherever possible, proactively manage the business.
Great, thank you. Khalid, let me come to you now, right? So we've been talking about omni-channel, which has been the ongoing buzzword in retail for a really long time. So in the beginning, maybe 10 years back, every time you'd have an e-commerce platform, it was considered omni-channel. And then multi-channel started being treated or used interchangeably as omni-channel. And today, it essentially is being where your customer wants you to be. And that is what the definition of omni-channel has evolved as. In the next 5 years, where do you see this definition of omni-channel going towards?
Well, omnichannel, yes, it is a big word now, and everybody's talking about it, and it's about the customer seamless journey from online to offline, and it's about the relation between your promotions and communication and your distribution. So to have such a result, you need to pay attention to your agile process. And that will carry on 3 different components which related to people and your organization structure and your database and information systems. And that's a lot of change for organizations to digest. Every part of that comes with lots of new changes and new development. If you look at people, you need different set skills. You need different work culture. You need different even job descriptions and motivators for every part of the omni-channels or every channel of the omni-channels. One of the biggest challenge for omni-channels are the talent. You don't have much talents available in the market, and you need to really work hard, especially that everyone in the market is targeting the same thing. So it is not easy to get, it's not easy to master, and then you have people moving around, and that doesn't help organizations to stabilize. How we will grow in the next 5 years, that's a very big question. And it depends on every organization, how they will be able to develop their internal competencies and how they will focus and which channel. Jack of all channels, master of none. So, I mean, you cannot master all channels and you cannot be a leader in all of them. So each organization will try hard to focus and develop, especially that it's a very changing technology related to digital sales, or we all master the old traditional offline businesses, but it's about the new, and every day we see new development in that, as again the metaverse and all that. How will that impact us? How we will interface between the real world and the meta world, and how customers will change, products will change. Now digital products are on sale and people are investing in it, and how that will impact the real products, where customers will invest their money. So Omnichannel will remain, but I believe the digital world with its sub-channels will develop much faster and much bigger, and will be more interesting, especially for Generation Alpha, which will take over in 5 years, and that will be a challenge for all of us.
Great, thank you. Generation Alpha is essentially what you are preparing to cater to already, right? Considering its games and considering there's already so much integration of AI, VR, XR technologies in what you do. However, let's take it in the retail context. We are seeing gamification coming in retail, like we mentioned earlier. We are seeing AR experiences. Even in fashion brands, we are seeing virtual try-ons and all of that. So talk us through this amalgamation of gaming in retail and retail in gaming.
Yeah, it's really interesting times. I'm actually very fascinated that everyone here is talking about gaming. And you know, when I've been in the business for 19 years now, and this was not a term used so often. So really amazed with that. But I think we all have realized that gaming is a very important part of our life. We like to have some kind of experience that is different from the real world, right? And that is all about metaverse and NFTs and things like that that are coming in place. What I'm seeing is a lot of companies using these tools to kind of bring consumers, to attract consumers. And I think retailers are doing it very effectively. If you look at online retailers, I think they have taken kind of a lead on it, where they use gamification to even log in, for example, or even something that makes them stay on the website. Nobody really wants to lose a consumer. Nobody wants a consumer to go out of their website. So it's all about experiences, right? And I think gamification provides a great tool to provide great experiences for consumers. We are taking gamification to different levels. We want the consumer to come in our store and experience the store the same way they experience their house. So create gaming setups where they can come and experience how they could potentially make their stores look, make their houses look. And at the same time, gamifications can be used for our consumers on our apps, on various platforms, for them to kind of starting to game, or even I think it's a tool which also helps people who don't game at all. I mean, how do you start gaming? The first thing you do is probably pay a game on a mobile phone, and then you eventually get to a console game or a PC game, and then it leads to esports, it leads to so many other things. I mean, buying digital assets and so on. So I think gamification is a very, very important tool in our industry, and I think it's just set to grow. And there's so much potential for game developers and artists to create these important tools and kind of sync them with retail for the future.
Great, thank you. So Ahmad, let me come to you then, right? We're talking about syncing tools with retail, syncing AI, VR, and the likes in retail. Today we see that the purpose of stores are changing. So stores aren't purely meant for transactions because we have a mobile phone for that, right? Stores are now stages, they are experiential avenues, they are marketing avenues and all of that. For Baraka Retail Group and for the audience that you cater to in Egypt specifically, how have your store's purpose, objective, meaning evolved?
Okay, I'll go back to the first logo or statement for one of the first technology company. It was Nokia, which was the classic case of not developing. It was connecting people. I believe regarding the metaverse, the future, whatever the future is coming, is all about, we used to have different chapters in our life. We used to have time for gaming, time for food, time for work, and it's different chapters. What the technology is offering in the future is that we're having all one life. We're having a gaming where the kid is wearing a Balenciaga, as you mentioned, and I can be hanging out at home and ordering Papa John's pizza through the mobile app, and that. So it's all about, I think, the future, and the stores will have the purpose of serving the idea of connecting the people in their chapter. You will have only one life where you can play your game, you can eat your pizza, you can buy your, whatever you're doing, it's all in one chapter. We're here now in Dubai. My family is back in Egypt. I'm following. Before that, we used to have problems connecting and knowing what's going on. Now you're living with them second by second. Yani, yesterday in a dinner, my sister was having an assignment with her kid for an exam while she's being in Dubai and he's in Cairo. This is the idea of implementing and connecting everything and incorporating the lives and the experiences of everyone within the same arena.
Can I actually do a little bit of storytelling, just to pull it all together?
Please go together.
So Halloween, as a mother, I hate Halloween. I don't know if anybody can relate, but it's awful on so many levels.
It became so popular for some reason, I don't know why.
Yeah, so normally the 2-3 days before Halloween are mad. We don't know what we're gonna wear, etc. So as a working mom, Halloween comes and I forgot about the costumes this year, wasn't top of mind. So I go to my son, who I knew was gonna cause a massive panic. And I said, we didn't get your outfit, it's getting late, it's, we need to go trick-or-treating. And he's like, calm down, I've got my outfit, I'm going trick-or-treating. I thought, okay, I'm divorced, so I thought maybe his dad figured it out. And then I sat there and I said, so when are you leaving, when are you going? And he said, no, it doesn't start till midnight on a school night. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I won this ticket on Fortnite, and I paid with, obviously his V-Bucks to buy his hoodie or whatever. And they're going to be, and I said, what about trick-or-treating? You love, trick-or-treating, collecting a lot of candy. He's like, yeah, we're also going to be given candy. Okay, so I'm tying it to food and I'm tying it to clothes and all that. So he bought his outfit, which probably cost me more than a normal outfit. For him, he trick-or-treated. He got candy. Like if Papa John's was there and gave away a slice of pizza, for him, he ate a pizza in his mind. So you might think it's scary, but for them, the idea of the boundaries don't exist anymore. I don't find it scary at all. I think it's quite normal if you understand it. Then similarly, they had a concert with 21 Pilots. Their sister, who's 21, had tickets to go to the event. They had to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch the event. Her concert was 2 months later on Roblox. So they woke up, they watched the game as Roblox characters. They can be up, down, they can eat, they go get money and buy things and so on. And they bought an outfit, they bought like they bought the t-shirt for the event and everything. So when their sister went, she sent them videos of the actual concert, like, wow, I'm actually here in person. Their answer was, we already went. Yeah. So when you talk about alpha, I mean, we're not 5 years down the line. It's today, now, in my home, tonight, 3 o'clock in the morning.
But honestly, tell me on that line, right? Like, how sustainable do you think this is? So these are, I mean, I know you said that you don't really believe that they're not real experiences, and your son doesn't believe that, or your child doesn't believe it, that it's not real. For example, the pizza, when you said that he ate it, in his mind he ate it. But how sustainable is that? How long do you think that will last when people are craving those social interactions, when people are craving those real experiences? experiences. Do you think this virtual world is actually going to be the reality in the long term?
I have a friend who has 13 and 15-year-old kids, and she said she doesn't know any of her kids' friends. And I said, yeah, I mean, maybe it's different. She said, no, they're all on Fortnite, so I don't know who their friends are. But they tell them everything. They share their problems, they talk to them. In fact, especially boys, they're much more comfortable anonymously talking to their friends. So I think it's very real that this is their world, and they make friends based on someone called Velver XP10 or whatever their name is. It doesn't matter what their name is. That is their name, and that is their friend. And they talk to each other as if they've known each other a long time. Obviously, as a parent, it fills you with fear of all the possible issues that can happen, but let's take the negative element aside and the safety elements aside. You know, when you talk to the people at Epic Games or Roblox, it's fascinating what's coming next. You know, imagine Expo, how beautiful it is, experiencing the waterfall, all the experiences there. You can totally see that happening on Roblox, you know? And the kid wearing a Gucci t-shirt that they paid $14 for instead of 1,400 dirhams for them it's exactly the same. So I think for them, they've normalized both worlds perfectly well.
Great. I'm going to ask this to the audience here, right? Like, from what Nisreen said, she's told us some very interesting stories here. Does this sort of scenario scare anybody? Or am I alone of being in this virtual world? Does it scare anyone? Show of hands. A few people, that's it. Okay, so I think everyone has sort of accepted that. Sure.
Yeah. You know, Shruti, I think we need to understand why this is happening, right? I mean, if you look at our kids today, they start off using an iPad at the age of 4 or 5 years. They are way ahead in technology than us. Yeah. And they're living in a very, very different world. In a school, I mean, my kids take an iPad to the school. They spend about 8-10 hours, and then they come back home and they're chatting with their friends. And for them to purchase something online and being in that world online where hundreds of their friends can see it, that experience beats, you know, going to a mall with 5 friends. So this is just going to continue. This is just going to grow from here. I think this is a generation, I call it the iPad generation, which is kind of heading to that model. And this is only going to grow from here with more and more people getting involved. More and more people are going to be online.
Yeah, I think it's not about why this is happening. It's about seeing what's happening, digesting what's happening, and being part of what's happening.
Correct.
Yeah, 10 years ago, digital cameras were something very big. Now, it doesn't make any sense for anyone to hold the camera. You have everything here. But I think if we don't need to find the reason why this is happening. We need to understand how can we make sense in this transformation. And for example, Balenciaga, the store that was mentioned, became the smartest because of the Fortnite thing. My daughter is 11 years old. Her dream once, the first luxury item she wants to own is a Balenciaga shoe. It took me a while to convince her that it's not for her age. You cannot wear a Balenciaga. Said, come on, I wear it on Fortnite.
So my kid, when his friend wore his Balenciagas to school, his response was, he's so stupid. Why did he pay so much? It's a lot cheaper on Fortnite.
Yeah.
That's a smart kid.
But I think this is where...
I can get him a discount.
You're working in the luxury. Balenciaga was mentioned in this room 5 or 6 times. This means something that this is the part of the new world.
I was just going to say,
This is very
Balenciaga
significant.
hasn't sponsored this show, by the way. It's
Yeah.
very organic.
I think this is where we need to pay attention to these consumers, right?
By the
Offer
way,
them
I have to visit Geeky every time I come to Dubai and buy stuff. I just bought a headset with a mic for her kid, who was asking me every day for that.
It's incredible, like, where this conversation is headed towards, right? Like, we're talking about brands, we're talking about this digital world that people have accepted at this stage. So, let me come to you now, Carl, right? What are the tools that retailers need to have at their disposal to cater to this new generation, for whom this digital world is natural? What are the tools that you need to be ready and be prepared for this generation of Gen Z and Alpha?
Well, I think first of all, the new earned, and I say it's a new earned appreciation, but I think it's just been a lot more firm now in terms of where we have to build our infrastructure. Data analytics has never been more critical for us. I think that we have made so many decisions based on assumptions of consumer behavior rather than actually truly basing it on fact of data. So one of the things, and I'll use a more recent example of the critical stand that data analytics has played in even our concept evolution. We had this ill perception of we have these consumers, whether it be Gen Z or beyond, and they shop in a certain way online versus offline. And actually, through our data insights, we very firmly appreciate it. In actual fact, there's not a very varied difference in terms of how they shop, whether it be on our online app or whether it be in our physical store. Now, the impact of that was quite significant as we're going through a concept evolution. It had a huge, tremendous change in our design brief, which is one of our new concepts under the GMG Sports vertical. And that can't be disregarded because when we talk about consumer experience within the physical space, before you can truly impact those touch points, you've got to really base it on data fact. The minute and the second that we try and even think like a Gen Z, we're going to fail. And that's something that we are putting a huge investment into because we have a different complexity as well. I mean, we operate now in Asia, North Africa, as well as in the GCC. So when you look at even local consumers, I just freshly came back from Malaysia last week. And when I was actually looking at Malaysia, if you look at the youth, which actually for us, we have an enormous commitment to the youth in terms of, again, our GMG Sports vertical as well as GMG Health. Actually, academically, they're very much focused on that rather than sports. And we've actually done a lot of case studies where 75% of youth stop playing sport by the age of 12 due to peer pressure, whether it be through a parent or whether it be through the schooling system. And
Stopping, you said?
Sorry?
Stopping?
Stopping, actually actively playing sports. And the reason for that is because it's lost the enjoyment. So again, when we look and we did further consumer insights, we realized that actually we had to challenge our brand content strategy. That actually it wasn't so much about anymore about endurance, it was about enjoyment. It's no longer about being your best self, it's about being your happy self. And that's something that truly is enormously important now with particularly what's happened over the pandemic. The amount of people that I personally relate to that's made significant life change decisions to be happier, whether it be leaving a job or starting up their own business. There's been a huge shift to that. And I think that that's something that, once again, we're not ignorant to, and we're going to continue to really invest in making sure that when we challenge ourselves, whether it be enhancing an experience in store, we have stronger data to support it.
Great. So I completely agree. Goalposts have been changing. Even personally, people have started reflecting more, right? So in that context, let's bring it to the business context of things. Metrics to measure success, even that sort of has to change, right? From everything we've just discussed today. Traditionally, it's been sales per square feet, year-on-year growth, revenue, numbers, and all of that. But from every conversation we've had now, probably Balenciaga is the richest person or the richest brand on the table. There's just so much brand value and there's brand appreciation happening right now. Let me ask you, Muna, about the change in metrics. What do you think should be the metric going forward to measure the success of a retailer?
So I think really what's lacking in the region is excellent customer service, to be honest. And so there are a lot of things that need to change in the region in order for us to reach that stage. And I was having a conversation really just before we started with the gentleman from Salesforce. And basically what we have concluded is the fact that yes, you do need software. You do need CRM software. You do need, absolutely, data is so important. It's actually key. But you also need the right people within your organization to actually analyze that data. So software is important, but also people. And what I see in the region is that we are not investing enough in good teams that can do that data analysis. And we need to do a lot more from that perspective. We obviously need to look at data like NPS and a lot of data needs to be analyzed. And so I think every single touch point of the customer has to be perfect, has to be seamless. And in fact, I know obviously this is given, but even once the customer does enter your store, that exact same story needs to be told to the customer. And the product needs to be to his sort of standard, because we're online, we're researching, So every single touch point needs to be done seamlessly, and that requires the right people. I think also Khalid mentioned that people, hiring the right people is key to getting that data out there and really getting more revenue and customers to your database.
And our KPIs have not changed, actually.
Yeah.
So the only thing that's changed is we don't talk about them anymore.
Yeah.
They're what we call qualifiers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So including supposedly the best customer care
Yeah.
should become like the West, the qualifier. It's not
Absolutely.
something that sets you apart. It's what the customer expects as a base.
Yeah.
And then on top of that is what we're building on to become special.
Yeah.
And that's what Muna's saying, that those qualifiers
Yeah.
are still not qualifiers for
Yeah.
us.
And to
But
be-
sorry, those,
Yeah, no.
those metrics that you talked about, the
Yeah.
business metrics that we were all learning here at Retail Middle East 8-10 years ago, now we don't talk about them because they're integrated in our everyday, which is great. We've come a
Yeah.
long way, but
Yeah.
there's a long way to go.
And to be honest, to hire the right talent, you need to be involved, as in we need to
Yeah.
be involved in that hiring process, because we understand what we'd like to achieve. We are going to ask the right questions. I don't leave it up to just the HR manager to I get involved with key people who are going to make a difference to my business. And what I mean by key people is not just general managers. I'm talking about even the guy at the back end who's going to do the analytics. I get involved with hiring those type of people because I know what I want to achieve with the business, you know?
And I think data in the past has been about how did we do last week? How did we do last month? That's not going to work anymore. What we did last month is important. We'll note it down. So if there's an hour meeting, 10 minutes are how we did. The rest of it is what are we going to do? And what do we project next week is going to look like, or tomorrow is going to look like, depending on the metrics. So data is changing from analyzing the past to
Yeah.
forecasting the
So-
future, depending on many different elements, depending on the business.
Yeah.
If it's a business that relies on traffic or
Yeah.
weekends or weather, or a brand that relies on those elements versus something else, the right data sets and the right extraction, the right
Yeah.
analyst
Exactly.
who can think forward
Absolutely.
is very rare. There are a lot of people who are, it's very easy to analyze the past. But
Yeah.
that's where we need to stop that.
I think the matrix never changes. Yani, when you discuss the matrix of retail, the ends are always the same. We're all on the same table. We want to sell more pieces to more people, creating more profits. That's why we're all on this table. What we're discussing here are the tools to reach that, whether through connecting the customers through e-commerce, through digitally, through customer service, through stories. So at the end of the day, the metrics of the retail or any business will never change. The KPIs will always be the same.
Yeah.
What will change is how to reach the tools to reach these ends. And not the ends, but the ends will never change.
Right, sure. So let's talk about those tools. And again, alluding to the fact that Nisreen, you mentioned that, there's been this entire conversation of data versus intuition, right? Because data traditionally has been predicting what's happened in the past, but with the rapidly changing consumers today, it probably isn't that predictive pattern we need. We probably need something that is a little more advanced. So let's talk about those advanced tools to help us prepare for this near future. So starting with F&B, right? So how or what kinds of technology integration do you think is required in today's retail landscape?
So apart from conventional means for which operating teams are responsible, we need data, customer data. And that again is where operators have issues with aggregators. Some aggregators share data, customer data, and some aggregators don't. You have your own customer database, and so you have that data, but that really is what you need with the help of your IT team and now your marketing team, because say pre-pandemic, your IT team really managed the data, but now at Papa John's, we have a dedicated marketing cell that manages all our digital assets. And that that tool has become so important in not just acquiring, but retaining customers. It really plays a big role. Of course, the conventional means always remain in play. So I always believe that our team, in fact, I keep telling our teams to perform ROC, which is return of customer. Take such great care with every transaction so the customer only thinks of returning. Take care of ROC and ROI will take care of itself.
Great. So, Khalid, I'm going to come to you now, right? We're talking about cloud computing and we're talking about automated warehouses, stores as fulfillment centers, which is, again, in the past. In the future, what are these softwares that you will be using and implementing? And can you take us through the operational efficiencies that are required?
Well, of course, in a changing world, just before that, I would like to comment on a point made that we are all here focused on profit generation and how to make it better. I think with the speed of change we are facing, it's about survival. Because what's happening with the speed of change in technology and in tools, many retailers may not make it with the new generations. And that if the strategy makers and if in the boardroom we are focused on the profit, I don't think we'll make it. If we are not focused on tomorrow and on how we will make it through these kind of waves of change and waves of technologies, I don't think any of us will be able to survive such. And here we are talking, we used to see a change every 10 years or every 20 years, and we used to talk about the change. And then it is about the speed of a change now. It is so fast that we don't invest good time to talk about each wave of a change, you know. And now we need to be focused. People and how fast they need to change and how agile should be is a serious issue, and that is a problem of again in the region, availability of talent and the ecosystem which we're talking about. There is, I believe, if a proper ecosystem exists, it will help all of us developing more tools for retailers to be able to flourish and do better business. But again, we have to stay focused in the digital world because that's where everyone is going, where all generations will invest in. And I believe while we are trying to retain what we have as much as possible and make the best out of that, we enjoyed very long time out of that, we have to stay focused on the speed of changes happening and the new technologies. Let it be the meta world, let it be a VR or AR or any of those channels, but they are, in the end of the day, it's a digital world with so many sub-channels happening now, and each channel of them will need specialized management and a new strategy, and we need to stay focused on developing such rapid new strategies to catch up with each of this change.
100%. Let me come to you now, Carl, right? So we are talking about tools, we are talking about technologies, but we also are talking about strategies at large. In that context, we've seen that GMG has been diversifying its revenue models, spreading its arms, trying to venture into different categories. Is that a tool for your survival? Is that how you're ensuring your survival in the industry, by venturing into different categories? Is that something that retailers need to start looking at, diversifying their revenue streams and business models?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also it must be said that there's been a lot of talk around digitalization, and there's, of course, we understand that that is going to be the way forwards, but we can't disregard still the important role that brick and mortar will play. If you look at the local markets we operate, there is still, part of the social fabric is shopping malls. Whether you're going to Asia, again, just coming back from Jakarta and from Kuala Lumpur, meeting most of the CEOs of the malls, there is a strong reinforcement that there's still a huge appetite for consumers to be excited again shopping in physical space. And I think that really for us is the bigger investment in terms of how we diversify, ensuring that that seamless consumer journey really is seamless. And it's challenging everything down to even accessibility of live, accurate inventory. I think most people can identify that that comes with enormous commitment and enormous challenges just to get that right. But that's really the space that we have to continue to remain in to make sure that that is enabled. And then challenge anything from talent acquisition, talent retention, like we were earlier saying, that has to be challenged because that's going to be, like we both said earlier, and yourself, that is going to be your biggest enabler to it. And then also it's about consistency. I think one of the things that we recognize even pre-pandemic was, even on the GCC, was operating with absolute consistency across all countries and, not using excuses as to why you're not, consistently operating at a certain benchmark. And that's something that probably has been one of our biggest enablers, whereby we actually recovered very strongly out of the pandemic. I'm talking about on-the-ground investment of talent, as opposed to trying to operate business models from a headquarters in Dubai. Trying to operate an Asia business model from a headquarters in Dubai. And that has truly been one, again, a big enabling to what we've allowed to evolve. We've also committed to ensuring that, again, supply chain management, the pandemic really accelerated where we really needed to look at transformation projects. And again, you can't shy away from OpEx investment. Again, if you're gonna, look at it from a short-term perspective and look at it from a quarterly P&L, well, unfortunately, that's going to be far more troubling for the sustainable model of your businesses, especially in the retail side. And that's something we've been very firm on, down to building mega DCs. We just, got over a kilometer mega DC in Jebel Ali. That investment, of course, we can't be a reputable distributor if you don't have that efficiency. And again, the challenging of consumers going into physical space and not finding the product that they desire, that is where, again, we have to step up our commitment. Yeah. Whether it be going on to micro levels of challenging our back of house efficiencies, and then our in-store talent. I think that, the perception of great service, of greeting and thanking a consumer, that is really the space that you really have to start firmly challenging now. Often, I have relatives or friends coming over and there's this perception that there's good service with all due respect, even into our own concepts, and that has to be challenged because, no, it's far more than that. We're talking about experiential. What really is going to take someone off their mobile device or off their digital screen to actually shop back in physical. It's really not just engaging in product, but also it's about that point of difference of having the right experts within your retail space that can actually really educate the consumer of the value out of that product. So that's really the way we are firmly staying in that particular space.
So I went with my son the other day to a sports store.
Yes.
And it was amazing. It had everything, like it was such an experience, rock climbing, everything. But he wanted a sports shoe, yeah? And the difference between how we used to shop 10, 15 years ago is you walk in and you rely on the salesperson to tell you whether you should buy this shoe or that shoe. But they've done all the research. They know exactly what shoe they want to get. He wants Nike or he wants Adidas, whatever it is. And the salesperson sits there insisting, because he doesn't have that child's shoe size, it wasn't just me, it was everybody there. You need to take the next alternative and get it because, it still looks nice and we have it in your size. But the kid knows exactly what his friends are wearing. 100%. He knows exactly what he wants. And if you don't have it, he's going to go elsewhere. Probably didn't even notice all the investment that was put in the coffee shop and the rock climbing. And they just wanted that shoe in their size and they wanted to get out of there.
And Nasreen, that really goes back to your point about analyzing trends and the future. So not just analyzing like data from the past, but really having people analyze the trends of the future and then, as you rightly said, ordering the right products that speak to those trends, right? And so really like being in tune with what's happening globally, but also what consumers want regionally,
But Mona, also that brings a point of how educated our customers are. I mean, they are much better
Yeah.
now, and that is a problem for our people selling, and they need to be really up to the challenge, because what they are facing today is a very well-educated customer, and he's young, the customer is young, but he knows how to research, he knows how to compare, he knows how to find the exact requirement, and if the salesperson offline is not well equipped with this information, which usually they are not, you have an issue.
But I think really for us, this is where our Omni strategy comes into play, right? And I think that where there should be a touch point, for example, with that, if we weren't able to serve that consumer at that particular store, there should have been immediate accessibility to, okay, well, which store could you get it from?
Yeah.
Is it a click and collect model? Is it a delivery back to your home within 24 hours or same day delivery? And again, that again is something that organizations have to embrace.
Or
have
not
to
like
embrace
3
themselves.
to 5, maybe.
Exactly.
Let me-
It needs to be, and also the SLA of service is going to be more and more demanding in terms of I want it now,
Yeah.
I want it same day, with not 5 hours. So again, the amount of investment that's going to entail to ensure you can deliver that trusted service of timeline is going to get increasingly important.
Let me tell you a story that as to this discussion regarding what we're discussing about the new trends and how retailers can shift. Everyone, I think, knows the Yeezys with the Kanye West thing.
Yeah.
It went crazy last year. They showed around officially 1.6 billion pairs. And till now, I cannot understand why this hype about this is, why? What's it's so expensive? It doesn't make any sense. So the guy took his money, invested, and acquired Gap, or took a stake in Gap or something. Gap was the definition of a boring brand. A brand that was خلاص, يعني on the ventilator, and now to buy something from Gap, you have this new puffer jackets. It's 6 months in advance out of stock, and it's for $500. It came to my knowledge also that people starting to trade it in the black market. So Gap, a boring brand, is very sensible to the younger generation, and you're spending $500 on a Gap jacket to be traded in the black market.
It's called re-commerce, not the black market.
There's something happening there. And how can
Yeah.
this happen?
I mean, when you think about Goat or, StockX or any of those.
This
with
goes, I never understood what this goes thing.
Yeah,
It's like a stock market for sneakers, right?
Essentially, there's an index for sneakers and
I never
Yeezys,
understood
and
it.
so one of the reasons why they sell so much is obviously a lot of people make money off them, and so on. But it's a great branding story.
Yeah, but I think to
Yeezys.
hell,
For every one of those, there's about 1,000
think-
that failed.
I think there's also an issue with raw materials and the overall capacity to produce things, right? Overall, because the way they used to produce in the past and today, there's social distancing. Not all factories are operating. The whole components, the whole shortage around oil, coal, and so many things, so many factors. It's not only the T-shirt or the jacket, right?
Yeah.
You talk about watches, talk about PlayStations,
Everything.
talk about cars. Everything is in short supply. I mean, what happened suddenly after COVID? Everybody got rich. I don't-
Everyone's on a waiting list, yeah.
Yeah,
Everything
I think-
is difficult. I think as retailers, I think I agree with my colleagues here. The basic thing is to provide great products. I mean, if you can't do that, then everything else is not important, because whatever change you bring in and you don't have good products to sell, you're done.
but adding to Khalid's point that our people, our sales reps need to understand that, for example, like the story of your kid, if he wants Yeezys, he doesn't want a comfortable shoe, he wants the Yeezys. Specifically, it's an ugly shoe, very expensive, overpriced, and they want it. If he doesn't understand that, خلاص, it's a turn off for the customer, he lost him. Maybe if I understand that this is Kanye West, the Kardashian husband, he can connect to him and lead him to another option. You can get this, he made this collaboration with Off-White, so he'll understand his needs. So our people need to understand we need to go forward to our customers and come back through their minds and
that's a new
accordingly
skill,
develop.
yes.
And that's where you need retail technologies like lead generation and so on to bring that data back to your buyers, because what happens in big stores or big chains is that that information never reaches the head office. So it's very important that you invest in technology to get that information through to your people.
No,
I
but
think we
sometimes
need to-
you have the information and you have the budgets, but the supplier is not willing to give you the quantity that you need.
Yes.
So
100%.
supply demand.
That is the problem we have these
That's
days,
also,
right?
we have that everywhere, it's globally.
Supply chain is a global thing, but I think it's not about educating the people, it's about getting people from this culture. Yani, understanding this is not a matter of education. Yani, our kids and the younger generations are not educated about this. It's part of their mindset. They need anything, they just look to the phone. For us, we used to call it research. For them, it's a natural habit. This is the first thing they do.
And that is again going back to what Kalu was saying, right? Today's consumers are well aware, they're tech savvy, they're digitally aware, they know what they want to buy before even stepping in, like the example that you mentioned. But so much was discussed here in everything. So just coming back to the first point, that one of the points that you mentioned, Carl, one thing you said was this unified experience, which is very, very important today. You spoke about different countries having different experiences, but we see different channels as well providing different experiences. As a brick and mortar retailer who's gone online, and then as a customer, I have two different experiences where I can't associate with the brand. You know, the e-commerce platform could be hip and, you know, all really cool, but the brick and mortar store is the traditional store. So there is that gap which still exists with, you know, a unified experience for customers to resonate with the brand today. And that probably is one thing that also needs to be avoided in the future to be able to resonate, right? So just coming to the concluding parts of our interview, where we chart the plan for the next 5 years. I think, Nisreen, let me start with this, right? We spoke about shoes. There's the Nike skins and so many other skins in this virtual world that we're seeing. Do you see a massive potential for the crypto economy and NFTs today? Is there real potential in this market in the near future?
It's now, actually. It's not in the future. And you talked about the Yeezys and so on. So anything that has an index today, if you can't afford the product itself, you can buy into the index through NFTs and so on. And we're all talking about the metaverse, but it really doesn't matter if there's no NFT connected to it. So what's going to make it work is if that Balenciaga or whatever, and last time we're going to mention that, can actually be resold.
We have to get paid after that for mentioning it.
If it can be resold, that's when it becomes very, very exciting. So it's in the now. I think yesterday at Najla's event, there was a lot of talk about NFTs, and it's not in the future, it's today. I think we're all interested in that space. And I think companies are going to start looking at NFTs as a form of compensation as well, whether it's not necessarily salaries, but maybe could be shares or any other form of compensation going forward. I can see our younger consumers being very interested in that way of being compensated going forward. So there are multiple ways where NFTs could work and mining could work.
I second her opinion that it's not tomorrow, it's now. You casually mentioned the expression skin while you're talking right now. It's an e-gaming expression, I think, that if you don't play Fortnite or this, you won't understand what is this skin. And you mentioned it casually as if it's a normal word that everyone might understand. Skin is the character that you play with in Fortnite. They call it skin. And they buy it with something called EV-Bucks, which is a currency that is... So
half my credit card bill.
Yeah. So you mentioned it casually. That proved the point that it is not going to happen tomorrow. It's happening now. It's part of our expression, part of our daily conversation, using this strange words. And khalas, you expect everyone is getting it, yeah.
There was a paradox in my question itself. I said skins, but I said tomorrow. It is actually today.
Yeah.
There was a conference for cryptocurrencies in Dubai recently. Everything in that conference, from hotels, airlines, everything was paid by crypto. So it is in transaction. Everybody's using it. So it is now.
Absolutely, it is now. So we are charting the future, which is 5 years later, which has already begun now. Maybe this is not going to be something that, we're just talking about, but we're actually trading and dealing in. So perhaps next MRF, we will see you at that juncture. But before we conclude the session, I would like to go around the table once again, just to get an idea. You spoke about, when we started this session, about how your performance last year has been. I'm very interested to know what your plan of action for the next 5 years are. Real quick, does doesn't have to be for PJP, just for the F&B industry, for restaurants in the region. Where do you foresee it moving towards?
What's the future for F&B? I think the future has got to be great for F&B. Yes, the kids have started using iPad. The kids have stopped doing A, B, C, D, but the kids are going to eat 3 meals a day. And one of them will hopefully be pizza. So I think the future of F&B is great. Is that so for every business in F&B? No, not really. I think businesses will have to play smart. They'll have to navigate challenges as they arise. They'll have to adapt. Predictions are not always possible. For example, last January, we knew what was happening in 2020, January of 2020. We knew what was happening in China, but none of us were ready come March when things hit home. So I think F&B businesses will have to deal with each challenge as it happens. Current challenge, which we alluded to recently, just now, is the global logistics problem. Now F&B businesses have this undesirable task of beefing up their buffer inventory. It's crazy. Very soon you might find no pepperonis in our restaurants just because of logistical issues. And hopefully that time we'll have some pepperoni and we'll be able to charge the $100 for a large pepperoni pizza. But no, so these challenges will have to be met, and businesses who stay ahead will do well.
Great, thank you. So since you mentioned the supply chain challenges, right? That is one massive problem that we saw during the pandemic with the bottlenecks. Too many issues with China, the supply chain bottlenecks there, and then with the cargo and the freight, and then we saw the entire Evergreen fiasco that did disrupt a lot of supply chains. Are retailers also rethinking that model? Are retailers looking at sourcing locally, producing locally, manufacturing locally? Is that something which is also in the radar?
Yes, of course, it has always been. Customization with local products has always been on the radar, and it has always been a skill for all retailers. But it is, we are not in a place where you have lots of options. So you will always need to source. I believe the supply chain difficulties will not last long. It is a matter of a year or so where things will go back to its normal level based on the new norm. And the new norm will not be what we used to do. So, with current sophisticated algorithms, with current sophisticated AI programs and all solutions, I believe things will not be a challenge anymore. It will be back to the capabilities of retailers to adapt to the new change and to the new available tools to make the best out of it.
Right. Kishan, coming to you now. So obviously, in the last few years, you've moved on to the esports arena, and that is one key business revenue stream for you. Going forward, what is it going to be for this arena?
You mean for esports or for GK?
For gaming retailers.
Yes. So basically, what we are trying to create is really an ecosystem. The consumer is there. I think what we need to realize is that gaming got digital way ahead of other retailers. So in terms of e-commerce and so on, which came in, which actually got elevated with the pandemic. But in reality, gaming, it happened way years ago, right? So 10 years ago, we were started to think, oh, this business is going to get over. 40% of our revenue used to come from digital games. And we thought, okay, this is dead. We won't exist probably in a few years if we don't make any changes. But that's when we started bringing so many categories. As of now, we have over 30 possible categories in the store which the gamer wants. So what we're really trying to do is create an ecosystem. what does the consumer want? The consumer wants to game, but in order to game, he needs products. He needs a keyboard, he needs a mice, he needs nice gaming lights, he needs a nice monitor, he needs NFTs and the skins that we have been talking about. So we provide all those products. And what happens with esports is we're also creating a competitive environment. So now our consumer is not stuck onto his TV, but actually going out and playing with others. And that itself is creating demand, and it's creating a requirement for new products in order to compete. So in order to compete now, you need a better product, you need a better keyboard, a better mice. So the whole idea for us is to build that ecosystem for the future. And we are investing in that today. Yes, profits are important, but not at the cost of the future. The future is important as well. So we are making sure that every decision that we make, every investment that we make in technology helps us not now, but 10 years from now.
Absolutely, great. Ahmad, coming to you now, right? Optical arena has been quite interesting globally. We've seen some interesting examples like Warby Parker that's gone from, that's a very well-established D2C model. We've seen that coming in this region as well, where a lot of brands are moving towards from B2B2C to B2C to D2C. What potentials do you see in the D2C space? Are we going to see more of that in the Middle East?
Yeah, I believe it will keep on. By nature, humans are there to interact. So the D2C will always be there, and it's not a question of is it online or offline. Both will happen. But human nature, that what identifies us as human, that we can interact together. So will always be there. It is a matter of question who will be fit enough to survive the transformation. The fitting thing, or being the fittest, requires two things. If you have a problem, you have a solution to it. So now we're discussing 3 main problems. The supply chain. So the key solution is finding manufacturing hubs near your home market. Changing customer, you need just to make sure that you're making sense to your customer whatever he's thinking and whatever he's doing. So the question is, regarding the future, will the D2C increase or whatever? No, it will be a question of who is fit enough to make sense to his customer, to be part of his daily life and his journey, regardless of any evolvement or any problem that is going on in the back office or on the front end with the customer.
Great. Nisreen, coming to you now. I'm very interested in understanding content and context, right? And the role that it is going to play in retail. We've seen it taking a more predominant position with every passing year, where people are resonating or connecting with brands that have great content, and they're also in a lot of ways willing to let go of some of the experiential flaws they face otherwise because of this. Do you see it playing a very important role, especially in e-commerce?
You mean social media influencers and so on,
Not just influencers, where you don't really need an external third-party influencer, where the content is being created in-house by the brands themselves.
I don't think it's one thing alone that works. It's a combination of factors. What matters is being relevant and being fast and being very quick. So whatever fits the brand, every brand is completely different, and every brand works better on some platform or the other. For example, if I'm selling beauty in Saudi Arabia, Snapchat is a better platform for me than something else. As long as I use the right platform for that particular product, then it works. That I'm using the right key opinion leader that fits that brand, so it's not confusing like you're saying. You don't want to see something online that differs to what we've been talking about as a brand. So remaining consistent is really critical for growth. And it's also important internally, so the teams as well are not confused by what we're doing. So one thing I was just going to say about, I was with Virgin before, just the idea of always being ahead of the game, and the idea of adjacencies is really important. So keeping an eye on adjacencies is very critical, whether it's content or product. There's always opportunity, so that relieves supply chain. You asked about local, so we're finding a lot of amazing local brands who've achieved economies of scale in a luxury space that can fulfill global demands. So we are actually carrying a lot of brands at the moment that are doing better in the US than they're doing locally. So that's really great news for the local market in terms of our industry.
Amazing. Coming to GMG now, Carl. For you, again, with the whole restructuring that's happening with GMG, you've rehired or you've hired a whole new set of workforce. There's reskilling, upskilling, and all of that happening in the organization. What is this happening for? What are you reskilling them for? What kind of future are you preparing your teams in-house for?
Well, I think, I mean, we covered quite extensive, coverage today in terms of the points we're speaking about what's going to be demanding about truly to serve that consumer. It's a changing landscape. I mean, we talk about change in the pandemic, but actually there was a changing landscape in pre-pandemic in terms of consumer shopping behavior. And I think to keep that consumer engaged and retained within your retail platform is going to be, like we spoke about earlier, increasingly challenging. We covered data analytics and the importance of analyzing that analytics. So for us, it's about scaling up to make sure we don't just acquire the right talent, we have to challenge every single thing to retain that talent, because that's what's going to become increasingly difficult, is the fact of, one thing is acquiring the talent, and even that becomes a different challenge, because if you start to attract the younger talent that's coming through that's going to be in demand, well, then they're also going to look at your entire value system of your organization. They're going to look at things like flexibility, what you spoke about earlier. So adaptability is going to be important. For us, that restructuring in terms of scaling up is making sure that we don't fail that consumer. We heard about earlier how we missed a consumer, or in a sports store, that because their size wasn't available. Now that might sound really micro, but that is a huge issue. If you want to sustain in the physical space outside experience, you've got to have the product availability, whether it be through your omni capability of click and collect or save the aisle or endless aisle, or save the sale. Those are all critically important, but it requires the right talent to be able to make sure that that's implemented. And I referenced earlier what I said. There has to be consistency. We currently operate 12 countries, and we're soon going to be venturing into more. And if we can't sustain that consistency in the 12 countries, well, that's going to slow us down tremendously. And like I said, GMG has cemented their responsibility of a well-being global company, and we can't fail our consumer because we didn't take the right decisions of having the right talent that was going to serve that consumer. And that's really why we're going through the restructuring that we are, and we're challenging, not just in terms of our internal talent, but we want to make sure also equally important with the retention. I think that we do need to recognize that even in our local companies, we have phenomenal talent. And I think we need to make bigger examples of them as well. I think that often, what we found during the pandemic, you can't take any of that talent for granted. You really got to stand your ground in terms of recognition. And you really, that's why we're so invested in our one family value in GMG, because they got to feel part. We're a family-owned company, we're proud of that. But our teams have to feel part of that family dynamic. And that's something that's also increasingly important, because to sustain that while you're operating in more countries, to keep that element, that's something, again, that we heavily invested in terms of how we will achieve that.
Great, thank you. And finally, coming to you, Munal, just to wrap this up, right? I don't know why, but we have a lot of P's in retail that everyone alludes to as the key elements that people need to take care of: people, product, purpose, profit, process, etc. For you and for the future of retail and the sphere that you're in, what are the key elements that you want to keep in mind? And going forward, what is it that you will be focusing on most?
So really, for us, creating experience centers is something that we are focusing on right now. So instead of calling our stores shops, we're going to be experience centers, where we recently launched Al Ghurq Living Experience Center on Sheikh Zayed Road, which is a store that is speaking to our sort of really high-end customers that have been looking for bespoke wardrobes and bespoke tailor-made kitchens. And our launch was really around the 5 senses. So anyone who came to the Experience Center on Sheikh Zayed Road, we partnered with chocolate makers, scent makers, everything. And I think, as we mentioned before, customers are now really conscious customers, intelligent customers, and so we need to speak to those customers. So that's the future for us in terms of experience centers. Another thing I'd like to see happen, which we are striving to do, is patenting local products. And so relying less on brands and taking that know-how and really patenting our own products. So recently, again, within the Al Ghurg Living Experience Center, we launched a wardrobe, and so a lot of Khalijis, we call them, or people from the Gulf, like to perfume their clothes and their garments with oud, which is the incense. And so what has happened historically is that people put the incense within the wardrobe, and there have been many fires within households, entire households, taking on fire because of this. And so we went to these specific bespoke wardrobe makers, and we said, we want to solve that problem. And so we created a wardrobe where you can actually put the oud and the incense at the bottom, and basically close the cupboard. It's fire resistant. There's a glass in front, so you can actually see your clothes. And we've patented that product. And so we want to see a lot more of that type of thing happening, innovation within the region, speaking to our customers, but really also bringing in innovation from a global level and not just relying on global partners just to bring in that revenue. And again, last but not least, to your point really about values, I think that customers really are going to really buy into your values. So in the future, I'd like to see the Al Ghurg Group be a company that people really rely on from a sustainability point of view, from speaking to their values about whether you are interested in the environment or whether you are interested in women's rights or gender equality. I think it's really important as a group to really take those values and really work on them within your group. And sometimes that's not easy. It really does take time. But for me, I'm very passionate about gender equality, and so that's something that I've been focusing on for the last year, and we have a whole plan in place for that, really bridging that gender equity within the Al Ghurg Group.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Just want to add one quick insight about the trend going on. While we're sitting, I received a notification about a show called House of Gucci coming soon on Netflix or one of the platforms. This is one of the rising trends that brands like Balenciaga, which was mentioned 10 times on this table, Versace made a very conservative comeback. They had this show about Gianni Versace life. Now people are interested, youngsters, about who's Versace, although it was that brand, now it's making a comeback. This Gucci thing, it will polish the brand and it will relate more to customers. So I believe part of the transformation taking place, that brands are willing to tell stories through media to people to relate to and to emotionally connect to. Yeah, and this is a very significant thing taking place. Suddenly people are loving, after the Squid Game, South Korea with this thing. And I think in the Halloween, all customs were Squid Game. Yeah.
So shall we start a film fund?
I believe, we have to,
Okay,
a
production
Gorga
company.
Academy or something like this.
So everything is on the record here, by the way. So if you're starting a film fund, it's happened here at MRF. But again, thank you so much for that, right? Like everything from pop culture, like you mentioned, Squid Game, Queen's Gambit, what it did to chess sales, and everything that's happening seems to be revolving around stories. Even in the discussion today, Nasreen, you came up with such beautiful stories, and everybody wanted to listen to the stories, and then the conversation would revolve around that. So storytelling is playing such a key role in everything we do today, and more so in retail. So it was great talking to all of you today about your retail journeys, about the performances of all of these conglomerates, and of course, the future that you foresee for this industry. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us here. And if you don't mind, can you join us just on stage for a quick group photo, considering we're sitting in this round table here?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shruti. Well done.
Well, a very big thank you to Shruti and the panel there. Just before everybody leaves the room, in about 10 or 15 minutes, we will be breaking for coffee, tea, snacks, refreshments. But just before we do go, we have a quick 10-minute presentation for you. Now, the theme is going to be product, store, time, price, and channel. How do you find the right mix? If you're not 100% sure of the answer, then this insightful case study presentation on integrated merchandise planning, where Board International breaks down how the right processes and plans were implemented by Puma, Kering, H&M, and M&S to instill flexibility and efficiency in their operations. I'd like to invite John Strickland, the Business Development Lead of MEI and Emerging Markets, onto the stage. John, good morning, sir.
So good morning, everyone. That's my clicker, is it? Great. Which one's for me? Big green button. Great. It's fantastic to be here. And what's interesting is I do quite a few of these presentations globally. And the future of retail is always the one that comes up. What's the future of retail look like? And I think Mina's point was quite valuable. I took my team to Bond Street to the new Adidas store. The new Adidas store on Bond Street in London does not have a till in it. And I think what Nisreen was talking about was change is a constant. You have to embrace change. So what I'm going to be talking about today is what I see when I go into retailers. This is the landscape that I normally see. I see information silos with people taking data from these information silos to manipulate it, to repopulate it back into those information silos, which ultimately leads to a disconnected strategy between finance, sales, IT, operations, and HR. So processes become misaligned, which leads to what we call Excel plastering. So too much email flying around the enterprise, which ultimately leads to multiple versions of the truth. So this is really why Board exists. So the table here, the round table, they were talking about the importance of data. Board allows you in the decision-making platform to draw data from any and multiple data sources. So this can be from ERPs, CRM, legacy systems, data warehouses, cloud connectors into big data, data lakes. Once it's in the Board decision-making platform, we give you insight into what has happened from a historic perspective. So you're looking in the rearview mirror, if you will. Then to Nisreen's point, with predictive analytics and machine learning to help you predict what will happen in the future. So as an integrated all-in-one platform, it's giving you that entirety of visibility across your estate. Now, I wouldn't be doing my job properly if you didn't take this slide away as the key one point. Wherever you are within your organization in retail, whether you're in strategy, whether you're in finance, whether you're in sales, merch, operations, supply chain, HR, all of this is latent and inherent in the Board architecture. Start small. Identify an area of the business where you have some pain, where you're over-reliant on manual processes, you're over-reliant on workbooks. We can get you operational in weeks. And I'll explain for why. Now let's have a look at some use cases. So the first one is Puma. This is a project that we undertook 4 years ago. They put a new chief exec in, they put a new CFO in, they put a new COO in, because they realized that they didn't have visibility across the entirety of their estate. They had 36 different trading entities, different ERPs. Each of those ERPs was on a different version. The reporting coming back up to Herzegovina in Germany was in Excel, in Word, in PowerPoint. So they couldn't get a single version of the truth. So they went to market and they chose Board as their unified platform. Because as they look at the brand ambassadors that they have, Cara Delevingne, Rihanna, Sean Paul, as their ambassadors, the centralization and standardization of processes and systems to increase sourcing volumes, just those 4 ambassadors have over 500 million followers. So if Rihanna and Cara post in a t-shirt, I have 2 teenage girls, they will want that. If that's not available, so at the end of the 4-year program, they saw an increase in revenue by 11%, an increase in profitability of 13%, and a 10% reduction in resources assigned to planning. The next project was to enhance customer satisfaction, something we're all passionate about in this room, to make the right product at the right time, delivered by the right person. So across the entirety of their estate, they've got 5,000 stores. They measure 160 KPIs across a workforce of over 120,000 people. So as they started refurloughing their staff and repurposing their staff, they broke their workforce planning down as part of their digital transformation program into 15-minute sections. So identifying what colleague needed to be where, and that led to an increase in data volumes 700-fold. So boards in-memory technology meant that data is not an issue. We are uncapped on our data volumes. The retailers that we work with, when we look at general merchandise availability for Sainsbury's, when we look at the volumes of store SKU combinations in that specific project, we execute in less than a second. And it's that data volume that chose Marks & Spencer's in the United Kingdom to identify board. The touch point of over 1 billion data points, multiple data sets and multiple data sources. They started small, like I said from the slide at the beginning. They started small in the Office of Finance for Treasury Management. They subsequently went down into a direct product profitability project. Now that direct product profitability was looking at the costs, the direct and indirect costs down at SKU level. As they clustered their stores, they were looking at promotional activity of what was effective. Clustering those stores, to then they realized that certain of their SKUs, they were not actually making any margin on. So totally led to a rebalance of their promotional activity. They subsequently tied it down into the supply chain, so they were looking at the rate of sale of those SKUs in store and tying that down into the ABC and XYZ coordinates within the warehouse. So they were getting greater margin in store, and they were getting greater efficiencies and effectiveness from the colleagues in the distribution center. And as Davide Breda, the head of finance at M&S said, even a 0.1% improvement of efficiencies and processes on a business of their scale can lead to profitability in millions of pounds. The final case study is the Kering Group. Those of you not familiar with the Kering Group, Gucci, Saint Laurent, Bottega Veneta, Alexander McQueen, and Brioni, amongst their constituents. Now, what they were looking to do was to align the strategic initiatives of their organization, to then roll with the CFO, set those high-level merchandise financial planning targets, to then integrate into detailed merchandise planning, so exquisite margin analysis. So looking at allocation, replenishment, with in-season and pre-season capabilities to ultimately drive efficiency, profitability with the reduction of markdowns. And they did that with a personalization across the entirety of their organization in a single product. So I'd just like to come back to the slide that I want you to take away. To start small. Can I just see a show of hands in the room? Who is undertaking or is in process of a digital transformation program? So a few. So what I'd like to do is do the following. With these pre-configured apps, I can sit down with each and every one of you take your data, drop it into these appliances on the board decision-making platform, and get you operational the same day. You can then configure and customize it, but you can be operational within weeks on the board decision-making platform. So if anybody is interested in a further demonstration or indeed a pilot, we have a small stand. My colleague Sanford Burley is also available to talk. My contact details are as follows. Thank you all very much for your time today.
Well, thank you very much, John. It is time to have a quick refreshment break for a cup of tea or coffee. Please make your way out into the central areas. We're going to be back here with the rest of today's performances coming up in about 15 minutes. And if you are using the wonderful world of social media, please don't forget to use the hashtags MRF2021 RetailMe, tomorrow's retail experiences, and of course, robots in retail. We'll see you back here in about 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you.
Let it fill your soul. Your soul. Let it fill your soul.
Dunkin' Donuts would send out one single campaign to their 3 million existing customers. I told them, why don't you send out 3 million unique campaigns? They laughed at me and said, that's impossible. Today, Dunkin' Donuts is doing just that, sending out 3 million unique campaigns to their 3 million existing customers over SMS, email, and Facebook. The results? A 60% increase in conversions.
Dalma Mall is a super regional shopping mall and one of the largest in Abu Dhabi. It houses more than 450 internationally and regionally renowned and established brands with a robust selection of fashion retail, department stores, hypermarket, food cuisines, 14-screen cinema and many more dynamically diverse categories which have transformed the mall into a popular family destination in the region, making it truly Abu Dhabi's favorite mall.
Dunkin' Donuts would send out one single campaign to their 3 million existing customers. I told them, why don't you send out 3 million unique campaigns? They laughed at me and said, that's impossible. Today, Dunkin' Donuts is doing just that, sending out 3 million unique campaigns to their 3 million existing customers over SMS, email, and Facebook. The results? A 60% increase in conversions.
Dalma Mall is a super regional shopping mall and one of the largest in Abu Dhabi. It houses more than 450 internationally and regionally renowned and established brands with a robust selection of fashion retail, department stores, hypermarket, food cuisines, 14-screen cinema and many more dynamically diverse categories which have transformed the mall into a popular family destination in the region, making it truly Abu Dhabi's favorite mall.
Dunkin' Donuts would send out one single campaign to their 3 million existing customers. I told them, why don't you send out 3 million unique campaigns? They laughed at me and said, that's impossible. Today, Dunkin' Donuts is doing just that, sending out 3 million unique campaigns to their 3 million existing customers over SMS, email, and Facebook. The results? A 60% increase in conversions.
Dalma Mall is a super regional shopping mall and one of the largest in Abu Dhabi. It houses more than 450 internationally and regionally renowned and established brands with a robust selection of fashion retail, department stores, hypermarket, food cuisines, 14-screen cinema and many more dynamically diverse categories which have transformed the mall into a popular family destination in the region, making it truly Abu Dhabi's favorite mall. Dalma Mall is a super regional shopping mall and one of the largest in Abu Dhabi. It houses more than 450 internationally and regionally renowned and established brands.
Well, good morning, everybody. The 10th Middle East Retail Forum will continue in 5 minutes from now. So if you could finish up your cup of coffee and your tea and make your way back into the ballroom as we're getting underway in just 5 minutes from now. Thank you.
Check, check. Check.
We're going to start off down here.
Test 1, 2. Test.
Hey, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day. It's a new life for me, yeah. It's a new dawn, it's a new day. It's a new life for me. It's a new life for me. It's a new life for me, yeah. It's a new life for me. It's a new life for me, yeah. Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day. It's a new life for me, yeah. It's a new life for me. It's a new life for me, yeah. It's a new life for me. It's a new life for me, yeah. Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day. It's a new life for me, yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you could take your seats, please. We are about to begin the next section of the Retail Forum Middle East for you in about 1 minute from now. Thank you.
It's a new life for me. It's a new life for me, yeah. It's a
potentially going to lose that sale to maybe a pure play or another retailer. Now, the other part is kind of off-premise, like I say, is kind of utilizing other apps to fulfill goods. Now, this comes more in the form of things like Deliveroo and InstaShop at the moment. But these technologies are moving quite quickly into retail as well. Quite recently, our Makiaji beauty brand just integrated with InstaShop. So basically, you know, we've got back-end technologies that enable us to fulfill from store, but then we're using off-premise technology like InstaShop to enable us to fulfill a local order to a local customer from our local stock. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a cocktail, really. There's not one technology that can help you kind of progress in omnichannel. You've got to really figure out how that all weaves together in a holistic way.
That's a really interesting perspective, because as you say, it's no longer you can just go to one technology company and they have the solution for you, and that allows you to be omnichannel. Let's use that word. It is that mix of different technologies. Because if we're focusing on that customer experience, you mentioned going into store, the product is not in stock, what do you then do? And customers' expectations are that you as a retailer will solve that for them, not that they have to go off and go online and do something else to try and find the product. So I guess it comes back, and Piyush, if you can add some commentary here, are there technologies that can help us there?
Well, although I kind of have a background in technology, but I always believe that technology is not going to solve problem. And if I were to kind of paint a picture of how I see things, is one is experience now is valued more than product. Yeah, that's a known fact, which means, but still I can kind of, from what I'm speaking to retailers don't know how to price experience. Yeah, that's a big challenge. Whereas the consumer is kind of screaming out loud saying that I like experience more than products. So that is one problem. The second shift which has happened is the consumer is now in the control of what it wants rather than the retailer being in control of what it's going to offer. Yeah, which is a big shift of power. And I think digital is enabling that power in the hands of the consumer. So the consumer is calling the shots. What happened in COVID is actually people said COVID brought transformation, but actually it is the consumer's behavior which brought the transformation. Yeah, the consumer has moved on faster than any retailer, be it digital or be it physical retailer. And that, to me, are things where technology has to play a big role. And what technology has to be is, as I've defined it very simply, it has to be digital, native, experiential, omni-channel retail. Yeah, and there are three key words out there. Digital native. Yeah, which means that you need to start behaving the way the consumer thinks with the digital in their hands or in their minds. Yeah, that's the first important. Rather than putting in saying that I want to put in a technology, you first think from the customer's point of view, saying that, look, this is the digital experience that the customer is looking for. Point number one. Point number two is experiential. Don't do transactional. Consumers don't care about transactions. Transaction is obviously the ultimate goal, but it is the experience which will lead you to that transaction. So focus on that experience. And obviously, third is omnichannel as a concept has been there, but I'm pretty sure that for the next 20 years, we'll keep on talking about omnichannel, but still we'll not be able to achieve what omnichannel really means from a customer's point of view. So my view is that where you put all your money on technology is build a digital native, experiential, omni-channel retail, and that will create wonders.
Yeah, Daniel, any comments on that?
Well, I think whatever we build has to start with thinking from the customer in the particular market we're working on. We mostly operate in Saudi Arabia, so we have a very digitally native population, young population, so they really interact easily with any digital platform. But then we also have population from distant locations that are very new on this. So how they order online, how they do all this. So these people, they will need support. Sometimes they need to call a customer service team, and the customer service should be ready. They should have the right technology to understand who's calling and have all the information about this customer. So for that, we use our CRM for Salesforce. And also many of these people, they're scared of trying something new. Buying online for them is new. and they're really concerned about the experience. So especially the last mile in remote locations. Then for that, you need to be ready to spread your risk in different players. You cannot risk all in a single last mile provider. So for that, we're using a multi-courier integration partner. It's called Otto, Saudi startup, great product. And we're not thinking about technologies, we're thinking how these technologies help us to deliver the best experience. And finally, I think one of the main technologies is that all technology that has existed for centuries is communication, it's training. We have a lot of turnover in Saudi Arabia. New population are coming young to work in retail, and these people need to be trained. So obviously we need to be on the field, training people, teaching them how to operate and fulfill from the store, talk to the customer. But also some technology that help us is training technology, how we develop training materials that are interactive, easy to understand for the users, and that will help us to accelerate the speed of training of new staff coming to work with us.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I think it's very clear from what everyone on the panel so far has been saying, is that it's really important to have that vision as to what you're trying to achieve first, who the customer is, what experience we actually want that customer to have, and then technology, staff training, etc., then follow on. You can't start with one and try and sort of force it onto the customer. And I think that's what you were saying. And obviously one of those experiences is payments, Zander. How do we make, payments seems to be a painful process at the moment. I'll throw that one at you. How do we solve that one?
Yeah, so my conclusion of the session this morning, and also what you guys have been saying so far, is that there's a lot going on, there's a lot of change going on, and your answer to that is you need have different technologies to accommodate that, and you end up with a cocktail, right? And what we see is that quite often payments is overlooked as a pivotal element to blend it all together, right? Quite often the payment solution chosen is the cheapest one. It's just a terminal in a store. It's just a gateway online. It's not just a terminal in a store. It's not just a gateway online. It's an essential element in the experience that the shopper has. I have my own experience. This weekend, it's exactly a year ago that I arrived here. And at that time, I only had an international card. So the day before flying here, I wanted to buy, I have children, I wanted to buy a baby seat, diapers, all that kind of stuff. So I Googled, you end up on a pure player for children products, card declined, right? I went back to Amazon. No problem, delivered the next day. It was ready in the hotel where I stayed the first days. It was literally there, so great experience. But that local brand had lost my business for a while until I have a local card. So there has been a reason for that company to decline international cards. The same thing happened in stores. I also have an American Express card. It's not everywhere accepted. So you try, because it's not always clear, you try, you get declined. We literally see that this part of the experience is overlooked by retailers. And we're now coming in at a time where this can no longer be. In our company, we provide a platform for both online and offline on a single platform. So we recognize shoppers on all the sales channels, also in a call center. You spoke about call center, same thing, on a mobile, it doesn't matter. So in order to provide the solution that you're looking for, our advice is to very properly look at how payments can contribute and tie things together.
Perfect, and clearly, I mean, payments provide some of the data as well, and data is one of the topics I'd like to cover. People talked about data as being the new oil, and actually I wrote an article where I taught that actually data is better than oil, because you can reuse data, you can share data amongst other people, whereas oil, you pretty much use it once. So I think it goes even further than that. And when these sessions at Retail Middle East Forum started 10 years ago, I think we were still at a point there where people were not even quite convinced by cloud, even for storage. They didn't trust it, they didn't understand it. Now I think we've gone beyond that. And actually, we're now talking about combinations of cloud and edge computing. So you do what you can at the edge, and you store it in the cloud. So you're optimizing both things. So I think retail's moved on quite quickly over that period. But overall, from a data perspective, I mean, Piyush, let's come back to you. How important is data? And have you got any examples of how it's being used?
So obviously, how important is data? Data is the new, I always use the term, data is the new soil. Yeah, it was considered to be oil, but I believe data is the new soil. And the reason is you need to nurture each and every experience, each and every activity, each and every process in your enterprise with data. If you don't do that, that experience, that process, or that activity is not full. And that is the most important. But unfortunately, I was reading some survey. It was very evident that organizations still use less than 10% of data which is available. And there are multiple reasons for it. One of the reasons is data is not available in the form that they would want, point number one. Point number two, the skills which are needed to analyze and use data-driven decision-making is not there. Or B, or C, data is siloed, and it does not give you the right view of what the person is looking at. So this fragmented data, siloed data, not having skills, and predominantly not looking at the right scenario of that data from an organization perspective are the ones which are kind of stopping us. And Thomas Davenport, the famous author, I think he wrote the article in HBR in 2001 in which he said that enterprises will be differentiated based on the use of data in 2001. And again, he did a survey in 2019, and you could go and refer to his article in HBR again. He said that only, I think, 5 to 6% of organizations were able to do anything meaningful out of use of data. So there is a long way. People have been just doing lip service because it is difficult. I'm not saying that people don't want to do it. It is difficult because our gut feeling and the way of doing business, the acumen of doing business is so much ingrained in human beings that for any kind of experienced professional to give that up and say that I will start believing data almost to a very large extent and then start taking decisions will take at least a generation to pass on. And I think that is where the whole problem lies.
So if I go back to my education, my degree in economics, I was always taught that actually data doesn't have a huge amount of value until it becomes information. And I think we're even moving to the next phase where even the information, so dashboards, etc., don't necessarily have the value until they're turned into insights or even into actions. So I guess, again, to the whole panel, how do we make the data work for the people in the stores, for the customers? How do we make decisions based on that data as opposed to relying on someone to interpret it? Xander?
I think that's the quote of the day, right? Because that's something we also strongly believe in. So when you go to a store and you buy something and walk away, quite often the people in the store have no idea who you were, right? So you're kind of anonymous. So what we're trying to do is give real-time insights on you when you buy something. And it starts with aggregated data. So what are the demographics into a store? Do you get more, if you get a lot of Europeans, but are they mostly Germans or Dutch? I'm Dutch. We're known to be cheap, right? So do we spend less on average in your stores than a German or Brit or a Saudi? That kind of information we're giving back on an aggregated level. Returning shoppers, and how much do returning shoppers spend on average more or less than a first-time shopper versus comparing online and offline. All that kind of aggregated data or insights. And then we can feed it back in real time based on card usage. So the moment you walk in and you buy something, in real time, our system can tell you, hey, this is a returning shopper, this is a first-time shopper. Of course, it needs to interact with your own systems as well, but that immediate insight on that previously anonymous shopper is extremely valuable. And you can treat certain kind of shoppers differently based on that real-time data being available. And it's not only in retail, it's pretty much in every segment of the market where you're spending money. That insight is extremely crucial to keep that customer. If we talk about newer generations coming up, they kind of expect that. right? They kind of expect to be recognized, appreciated, having a faster checkout, having a VIP experience, because all the apps are giving that, right? So that we consider that to be crucial. So basically, as a retailer, you need to demand higher standards. Do you really accept downtime of your bank between 2 and 5 in the morning? We just heard this morning there are people watching movies and buying stuff online at 3 a.m., people taking taxis in the middle of the night. I wake up early in the morning because of the kids. That's the time before I go to work, I actually do some shopping, right? If there's downtime on the bank side, you lose me. So you're demanding higher standards in that side, but definitely on the data side. So on the as a payment company, we provide those kind of insights.
Those sorts of insights, perfect. Daniel, on similar topic, so we've got this data. So is data the key to the experience, the personalization, and you've got customers coming in who've probably done their research, so they've collected data, they've done research. We heard from the CEO conclave that the kids going into the store have already selected the exact product that they want. So how do we use that data ourselves, what they've researched, and how do we almost share that and empower the staff in the store? Have you got any thoughts on that?
So, for example, with our vision with our e-commerce experience is that this e-commerce data that we're getting from visitors in the website, that not get stuck in a silo. And that's what's happened in many organizations. They build the e-commerce team, the retail team, they talk maybe once every month, but it's a huge opportunity lost there. So obviously the people working in retail, they're not that used to get very granular data. They probably use only to see traffic, conversion, but and maybe some transactional data from the POS. But in e-commerce and customer care data gives them much more insights. So for instance, in our company, what we're building is a very clear process, whereas the e-commerce and customer care team are meeting weekly with the retail teams and sharing a lot of insights in a very easy to understand manner. It's not about presenting a big dashboard and showing off how cool I am with data and I understand, you don't understand. It's like, okay, what is the story behind this data and how can we use this data? So these are our top 10 bestsellers. This is our top 50 landing pages, or these are our top 50 products that people are visiting that are not converting. And this conversation together, involving the people in the field, can really help to make decisions together. There is a lot of knowledge from the store locations that is not really locked in any system, the knowledge from the store staff. That's why it's also very important that our people working in e-commerce and customer service, they visit the stores and they get information. It's not data, it's about context on what's happening in the experience. So it's again, I repeat, it's how we build the communication process between all the teams that can really help to drive. At the end of the day, we're in a retail business, we want to sell. That's what we
Perfect. Philip, on our online businesses, we collect lots of data. It's available to us. We know exactly what pages people have looked at, the journey they took to get there. We don't get that same benefit from our physical stores, or do we? We had a brief conversation outside. How do we leverage our stores, and should we leverage our stores to gain that data on both our customers, but also what's happening?
Yeah, collection of data is obviously the first step, and we've put various projects in place across the group and set targets for retail teams to collect data. So we set a certain percentage on how many customers need to share their data. So yeah, that's like a first step. But I suppose going back to your first point around, okay, we've got the visualization, but without actually turning that into action, it makes everything pointless, right? So last year we had quite a big data transformation project where we needed to pull all of our data in one place. Being an omnichannel retailer, we've got around 700 stores. We've got 9 e-commerce stores, so trying to get that all in one place is quite a big task. So yeah, we set out to put that in one place. We put our data lake in place last year. And now this year, what we've moved on to is that next step of how do we turn it into action. Now, what we find is if we find the objective first, so what is the objective? And a project that we worked on recently was like, okay, footfall in the shopping malls may be down. But what do we, so basically in retail stores, what we need to do is maximize the customers that are there and increase the average transaction value. So we done a deep dive basket analysis into our data, into our store data. We need to use machine learning to do that, because from a human point of view or an Excel sheet, we just can't get there. So yeah, we deployed machine learning to understand, okay, what should we be cross-selling and what should we be upselling? And when you do that, you can do it in two ways. You can either set the models to go out and find something that you're looking for, or you can do kind of what we call an untrained model, where it's kind of, okay, let's see what happens. And as a prime example, what we found in one of our brands was we had a really high volume selling product, and the teams were basically ignoring that product because it was like a high volume product, and it was like, okay, that's doing great. We don't need to look at that product. But what we actually found was it was performing really badly when it comes to cross-sell and upsell. So we had this really high volume product, which was people like snatching off the shelves, but we weren't actually selling anything with it. And, you know, without machine learning to go in and help us find that insight, we just wouldn't have found it. And you know, that turned into a project. So, you know, an upsell and cross-sell project in the retail stores. So, yeah, it's kind of starting with that objective and then working back again to the technology, I suppose.
That's a really good point about machine learning and AI. Looking at the data, finding out what the patterns are, and then doing something with that as well. So I'm going to shift tack. We've got about 5 minutes left. So we've talked about experience. We've talked about data. Let's get it. We talked about digital. Let's get a little bit more physical. Let's put it that way. And I'm not going to dance. Don't worry. Shoppers want things anywhere, anytime. How do we make that happen? Philip, you did talk about this sort of ecosystem of third parties, if you like a Deliveroo. Are we now reliant on these third parties? Are they now a natural part of this scene? I mean, we've certainly seen some of the valuations of these companies go through the roof, more than the retailers themselves, and they're just the third parties. So what's happening in this space?
Yes, so, you know, we've all been familiar with fast food, right? So we've all used Deliveroo, Talabat, and, you know, get your food within 30, 60 minutes. That kind of evolved onto supermarkets, you know, the last couple of years, and, you know, supermarkets are under pressure right now to be able to fulfill, you know, locally from the store via various apps like InstaShop. And then you've got the pure plays that have come into that sector, like, you know, Amazon and Noon. So, you know, retail, when you're talking about like fashion and beauty, they've kind of stayed away from it up until now, but we are seeing, you know, these local apps expanding their categories. So the example I used earlier with our beauty brand Makiaji, you know, listing products on InstaShop, you know, that we're doing it now because we kind of want to do it. Whereas I think in the next couple of years, it's going to turn into you're going to have to do it because as these apps kind of expand their categories, you're going to have to be able to keep up and fulfill for those apps. Because when somebody orders on InstaShop, they expect the product to be there within an hour, not later today or tomorrow. So it's very easy to list your products on these apps, but to actually fulfill them is very difficult, because if you try and fill it from an e-com point of view, your distribution center could be like another city away, so you can't actually fulfill from there. So it goes back to that store fulfillment, you know, making sure that you've got local stores with local shops fulfilling local customers through these localized apps, basically.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's almost turning full circle, isn't it? Since e-commerce began, e-commerce went to these wonderfully automated fulfillment centers, but because now the promise is an hour, or even in some cases 15 minutes, We actually have to go back to store to do the fulfillment, or something far more local, the hyper-local approach. So Piyush, 15-minute deliveries, is that what I can expect from Lulu?
Well, we've done a survey, and what we have found that's a very small segment. It's a new kid in the block, for sure. Everybody's trying. Whether it is feasible and does it have any unit economies, only the customer will decide. So we have launched express delivery already, which is a 1-hour delivery. We believe that is a promise that we can live with, and we're trying to explore that. But having said that, why this is happening is there are two extremes, yeah, and that you have to understand that there is a consumer which is a consumer which likes planned purchase, yeah, and if you do a survey worldwide, 80% of the consumers still are in the habit of having planned purchase. Nobody says, okay, I want to have pasta now, I want to have it in 10 minutes. If you do a survey, that percentage would be very, very low, yeah? Because people have been brought up in a sense in which saying that, what do I eat on the day, next day, or the next day, and things like that. So that transition to that 15-minute thing is just an instant gratification. And since there's a huge surge of money which is coming into it, they're trying to experiment it. It will lie somewhere between the planned delivery, which is the next day delivery, to that 15-minute delivery, somewhere between that. So the same day delivery will be a reality, and I think everybody is working towards that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not having one or the other. It's actually now having a combination, which unfortunately adds to the complexity. And retail is not getting simpler, is it? It's getting more and more complex. Daniel, have you got experiences on the sort of this rush for faster and faster delivery?
Well, in certain categories, for sure. So we have a chocolate business, Neuhaus, Belgian chocolate. And for this type of product, we'll see demand. People, I have a craving, I want to get chocolates, I have a party tonight, I need chocolates to offer to my guest. Also some beauty products. We mostly operate in luxury brands, and I think part of the experience in luxury is the expectation. Like, okay, I order something beautiful, expensive. I'm willing to wait, okay, not 1 week anymore, but I can wait till next day. Or in main cities, we're striving to do same-day delivery. I don't see at this stage, and we'll have to follow what the customer wants. I don't see someone ordering a $5,000 ring to be delivered in 30 minutes. It's usually this type of purchases that are very well analyzed, and people compare, and finally they made the purchasing decision, so they're willing to wait. But definitely, in any case, we have to be ready for that. Store fulfillment is there. The role of the store staff is changing, so you also need to be very clear on the expectations. It's not only about talking to people and being very nice to them and engaging with them. They also have to be, especially in luxury, they have to be amazing packers. They have to do the packaging experience with the very, very small detail. That requires training, that requires quality checks, continuous work. So we have to be ready for that, and we're working definitely on this direction.
Perfect, thank you. We are unfortunately out of time. We could talk about the technologies and the goals and the experiences for far longer. But I want to thank the panel. I guess in conclusion, we've realized that the data is absolutely key and is the new soil. And so we have to make sure we nurture the data, we use the data, but we turn it into insights and we turn it into actions. We know that retail is getting more complex, and we have to involve a much wider ecosystem of suppliers, providers, in order to meet the expectations of this rapidly changing consumer. So with that, thank you very much to the panel. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, a big thank you to Mark and the panel there for that fabulous discussion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the time has come where you deserve some refreshment. It's lunchtime. We are going to be breaking for lunch now. We'll be back here at 1:30 for our next discussion. Just before we go, again, I'd like to say a big thank you to our partners and our sponsors, of course, Zebra Technologies. We also have Dubai Outlet Mall. We have Altavant, Adyen, Board International. We have Ithra, Dalma Mall, Zeno, Devio, and KPMG, our knowledge partners. All of those have made this morning possible. Have a great lunch. We'll see you back here at 1:30. We'll see you in a bit.
Dunkin' Donuts would send out one single campaign to their 3 million existing customers. I told them, why don't you send out 3 million unique campaigns? They laughed at me and said, that's impossible. Today, Dunkin' Donuts is doing just that, sending out 3 million unique campaigns to their 3 million existing customers over SMS, email, and Facebook. The results? A 60% increase in conversions,